right. And we're back. um, there's been a few TYT clips of late that have, I don't know. I felt like saying something about making some comments. Yeah, shrill voice alert. It's Anna. So, there you go.
King of the intellectual dark web, Jordan Peterson, an inspiration to bros everywhere, decided to weigh in on the climate emergency because I guess the next trend among goons like him.
And already I have something to say. Preach it, Anna. Their members are terrible. Preach it, Anna. There's nothing terrible about that. But there's some dipshit's comment who keeps coming up either on this clip or one of the others that keeps saying, so and so says, capitalism works in theory but not in practice. I guess they're too stupid to know that there has never been a country that has tried full-blown capitalism with nothing else. There never has been. Like, we've never tried pure capitalism. It's always been a mixture of shit. I think Stefan Molyneux once said that either he estimated or somebody else, probably somebody else, somebody that he read about or whatever, estimated that if the United States had not embraced so much socialism in its economy and had gone full capitalism, like pure capitalism, that we'd be like 50 times richer than we are now. Something like that. It's like, probably. But anyway, but what I had to say here is that you notice that she said climate emergency. Now, it's my understanding that back in the 70s or so, they were warning, the media and whoever was warning us about a possible ice age. Like, be afraid, the planet's going to freeze. And then at some point that morphed into it's getting too hot and global warming. And they're still we're going in that direction, except they changed the name from global warming to climate change, probably because it wasn't getting consistently warmer all the time, and so they thought, it's better, it's better messaging or whatever. I guess it's better, to go with the climate change, because that way we can pretend that no matter whether it gets hotter or colder, it's still part of the same problem. And I guess they have now decided that climate change is too it's not an alarming enough term, so now they're going to call it climate emergency, I guess. I figured they were going to go with climate crisis. Maybe they use them interchangeably, I'm not sure. I think I've heard both. So anyway, but yeah, there's going to be and fucking side note here, I in the mail today I got my I don't have a camera, so I can't show it to you, but I have received my She Omnibus. It is huge. It's a huge book, and it's just volume 1, right? There's gonna be another one or something. I don't know. Big beautiful book. Anyway, and well packed too. Billy's wife does excellent job on that. But yeah, the what was it? Somebody. I'm sure I probably saw it on Hard Bastard stream, but somebody quite recently, one of these lefty outfits that he watches, that he shows clips from, and it could have been mainstream. I don't remember, but somebody on one of them not too long ago used a different term. I can't remember what it was. I wish I could, but I remember thinking at the time it was like, whoa. Like I don't remember what it was, like catastrophe or something. It was really over the top. It was like, man, they really want people to be worried about climate change, and we're not. Like, we're not. And real quick, I'll go ahead and point out my own feelings. It's like I always, like before becoming red pilled and even after becoming red pilled, I always kind of had this attitude of, well, I'm sure that climate change and man made climate change is a thing because obviously human activity, is producing greenhouse gases and surely, it has some effect. How much I don't know, but I always figured it had some. Um, and I kind of figured that, yeah, it probably will have, you know, significant deleterious effects. It may take quite some time for them to really set in, but I figured, it's probably inevitable that there'd be some kind of problem. I never believed that it was going to be, and still don't believe that it's going to be any kind of a, crisis. And certainly, if it needs solving, then you certainly don't want the government solving it because they won't. They'll just make it worse. They'll happily take all your money and take all your rights away, but they won't actually fix any problems that actually exist because that's not what governments do. They fucking suck. Anyway, um, uh, but the thing that really kind of and it was clearly not organic because everybody started talking about it at the same time. You had online, outlets on YouTube, and you had mainstream media, and my own sister, who sadly is a leftist, all saying it at like the same time. A few years back or whenever, they all started talking about how all the cars and the industry and fossil fuel burning, all of that's bad, but it doesn't hold a candle to the cow farts. The cow farts are killing the planet, and so we've got to stop that. We've got to stop eating meat and stop having cows and so on and so forth. And the moment that they switched to trying to use that rhetoric, I knew that the whole thing was clearly bullshit. Why? Because, as I attempted to point out to my sister, who's very smart and very highly educated in certain fields, but not all. And I'd say, I guess she has deep knowledge, of some things, but not especially wide knowledge. So she often wind up talking about things that it's like, you don't really know much about that now, do you? But anyway, whereas my knowledge, I guess, is probably more broad generally, but not super deep on probably anything. Anyway, but the point is, I tried to point out to her the, simple, obvious fact that, well, yes, there are, I think I looked it up, I don't remember how many there were, like, I don't know, 20 million cows in the United States or maybe North America or whatever at the time. And I pointed out that, yes, there are tens of millions of cows now farting, but you know what? Before there were cows farting, there were bison farting. You know, and before that, other large animals, all the way back to dinosaurs, and they were farting. It's like large herbivorous animals producing methane has been a thing for hundreds of millions of years. It's not something new. It's not something that happened just because of human activity. And if that's so much worse for climate change or whatever than anything humans are doing, then that means that what humans are doing must not be gonna be a big problem. So yeah, when they switched to that to that narrative, or tried to, it didn't seem to last. They don't seem to be harping on about that like they were for a while. So maybe they realized it wasn't working. But anyway, but the moment that they tried that, I knew that nope, it's all bullshit. I mean, not to say that there's not any kind of climate change happening. Of course, climate's always changing. But anyway, they again, further with the, I'm sorry, we're barely into it, and I'm already, but yeah, it's a short video. It's only, it's less than 8.5 minutes. We shouldn't even be here a full 2 hours. based on how much I had to say about the last 9-minute video. But anyway, about climate change. I think the climate alarmists themselves have stated in the fairly recent past something along the lines of, average temperatures are expected to rise 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, I think, over the next 50 to 100 years. And it's like, I mean, people who, you know, people who think about Fahrenheit or or whatever, or people who simply don't think about, what that means to have a global average, increase of that, of any amount, frankly, could easily dismiss that as being nothing. It's not nothing. I mean, that's a significant increase in how warm the planet is. However, it's worth, they act like that's going to, exterminate all life or something. Like it's a deadly, deadly threat to all of us. We won't exist if this happens. And it's like, well, a couple 100 million years ago, wasn't it like 10, 12, maybe even 15 degrees Celsius warmer on average? You know, the middle of the North American continent was underwater. It was super fucking hot on Earth at the time compared to now. And the planet was positively festering with life. It's not a problem. I mean, the one thing that might be a problem if things get warmer is that a lot of diseases tend to thrive in the tropics, and they don't thrive so much at higher latitudes. They probably will. So, that's an issue. That's something to really think about. But there are many, and this is something that Peterson himself and I don't have any, love for Peterson at all. I don't trust the man, and I think I've said why, but I'll explain again here in a minute why I don't trust him. Anyway, but he does bring it up that he says climate is everything, and he is kind of right. It's like there are a lot of things that the climate alarmists don't ever bother to take into consideration. One thing that doesn't get considered, I'm pretty sure, is that they don't ever account for the possibility that the sun will, emit less energy during certain periods, and we're not sure when that will happen, but it could happen, and if it happens, it's like it gets really fucking cold really fast without the sun, or even just a drop. I mean, I remember the one time when I was, how old was I? I guess I was a teenager, maybe, when we traveled to, was it Missouri? Kansas? Some fucking place kind of in the middle of the country. Um, we traveled there because that was supposed to be like the best place to see an eclipse, that was happening back in the 90s or whenever. And so, we got there and we stopped at just a gas station. And funny enough, the people there had no clue that it was supposed to be happening. So we got out and watched it happen, and the moon was only blocking the sunlight for a few minutes. It was and obviously is traveling in orbit the whole time, so it wasn't completely occluding it except for just a very brief time. But as brief as that was, holy shit, it went from being not just a warm but a fairly hot day outside, really, all things considered, to being quite chilly. And that was just that quick. So, just a minor drop in how much sunlight you're getting or whatever can have a massive impact on how fucking warm it is. So if the sun goes into a solar minimum, cycle or whatever, then we could actually have like a mini ice age happen, and so you don't know. Like you just there's no telling what's going to happen for sure, and there are reasonable solutions that don't involve a bunch of crazy shit. An uncle of mine actually suggested something quite some time ago that made perfect sense to me. Instead of doing crazy things or whatever, just pay farmers in the middle of the country to grow a lot of extra crops, harvest them, put them in sealed containers, ship them down the Mississippi, and sink them to the bottom of the ocean. What have you just done? You've just done a very low-tech carbon capture operation. I mean, that would work. You know, my stepfather suggested something even more simple: mandate that people not keep their lawns quite as short as they normally do. Make them keep it a few inches, higher all the time. And it's like, well, yeah, that'd capture a lot of extra carbon, wouldn't it? Anyway, it's just there are simple things like that done over, done in large scale. It's like they would have considerable impact on things. So there's no need to go crazy with doing bizarre shit and whatnot. But the leftists always want to go over the top. They always want everything to be more trouble than it needs to be, I guess, is a simple way to put it. All right. I've wasted enough time. I dare not even look to see how much. Let's just get on with it.
Is to focus their energy on being the non-experts who question.
Okay, here we go. Another two things, actually. The non-experts thing, it's like that's an appeal to authority, fallacy essentially going on there, saying that you can't have an opinion that is in any way valid because you're not an expert. Except it's ironic that it comes from people like Anna. She's not a fucking expert on any goddamn thing, and she's got her fucking opinions about everything she covers. Anyway, but then there's the other thing that I want to mention real quick, and that is I really wish that the people who made VLC wrote the program differently or something. I don't know how it works exactly, but I know that it apparently doesn't do a very good job a lot of times of caching what it's looking at. Like it should load some of the video. And another thing that's really problematic is that it will play whatever it does have cached of a video or audio file that's stored on an external hard drive that the operating system has put to sleep because it hasn't been being used. And then it doesn't, like other media players will apparently try to go and fetch more data before they run out of cache data. But VLC doesn't. It keeps on playing until it has run out of stuff to play, and then it goes to fetch it, and the result is not a smooth transition. It's often a pause, where it takes a while for it to, start playing again, or even worse, sometimes in a video, the playback will, pixelate and become corrupted briefly for some reason. And occasionally, with some video files, not most of them, but some of them, I've experienced VLC having the audio and video go out of sync when that happens. And it's like, can't y'all build it better? Come on, man. Come on, man. All right.
In climate science. And so with that said, I give you...
And I don't trust the climate scientists, especially not the ones that, insist and have insisted repeatedly, apparently. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, Chunk Yogurt always wants to say that 99% of the scientists agree about, whatever the hell he's talking about. And, of course, that's not true. But the ones that do agree with propagandists like TYT or like Al Gore, for instance, and keep on saying, we only have 10 years until it's irreversible, and then 10 years later, somehow it didn't become irreversible because we still have 10 years before it becomes irreversible. They always say that, and that's how you know that they're fucking lying, because they always keep telling you that, in 10 years, we're fucked. And then 10 years later, they keep on saying the same thing. They keep on saying, 10 years from now, we're fucked. And then another 10 years goes by, and we're still not fucked. And they're like, well, in 10 years, we will be. It's like, how many times do they get to cry wolf before we accept that, they're just full of shit, and there's no reason to listen to them? The difference being that probably, unlike in the story of the boy who cried wolf, we're not actually going to find that there's a real climate crisis or whatever that kills us all. I mean, like I said, about the warming, the climate alarmists also predict, what is it, a 2-foot rise in sea level expected over a 50 to 100 year period or something like that. And it's like, if that happened overnight, that would be a disaster of biblical proportions. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over the course of decades. And so what's going to happen is not every place that people live right now, which I forget what, it's an absurdly high percentage of the human population that lives practically at sea level. I mean, I don't. I live hundreds of feet above sea level, but um, but it's not like everything's going to be underwater overnight. It's going to be, the sea is going to slowly encroach on the land, and people are going to slowly move further inland. And you're going to, be 20 or 30 years into it, and you're going to have people standing at the edge of the sea and saying to each other, I remember when the beach used to go way out there, now it don't. And that's it. It's like, it's not going to be a big fucking deal, even if it happens. And there's no guarantee that it happens, because like I said, the fucking sun could decide to go into a very cool period where it doesn't emit as much radiation, and then it's going to get real fucking cold. You're going to be needing that parka. But anyway, so it's just, anyway.
The most insane word salad you will ever hear. Let's watch.
Now, this is interesting. It is interesting because, what does Vox Day call it? What Jordan Peterson does, he does do word salad, but Vox calls it bafflegarble. And it is worth pointing out that that's true. He does do that. Jordan Peterson does engage in saying confusing bullshit that doesn't really mean anything. However, why is it that when other people are, you might think that maybe Anna's calling him on it, but she's really not? Because if you listen to what he said, as I recall, when I saw this the first time, I remember thinking, it kind of makes sense. But, it's not, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's doing a little bit of the bafflegarble thing. I'm not sure. But, he definitely has a point. Even if that's just by accident, he still has a point.
Watch.
The climate change one is a weird one. So that one,
that's because there's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word. And that's what bothers.
Now, if he really does mean like everything ever, everything that exists, everything imaginable or whatever, or even the unimaginable, then yes, that's completely ridiculous. And there we go with the dipshit. I'm pretty sure this is a YTP renewed. I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to be. Capitalism works in theory, not in practice. Yeah, that's bullshit. That person's an idiot. Anyway, if he does mean like absolutely everything ever, and he's including that as meaning, as climate means everything. Climate means everything from mice to dice, and cricket bats and elephants and everything, and dust, a billion light years away. Climate is everything. If he means that, then yes, that's just ridiculous, because no, climate doesn't mean everything. But climate does mean, and he has a point. This is where, like I said, he has a point, and I don't know if he really is making this point or if it's just by accident that he's well, whatever. It remains true that yes, climate includes everything that possibly affects the climate, including things that you may not realize are affecting the climate. So he is right that they can't account for everything. They can't account for all the variables. And most likely they didn't even try.
Bothers me about the climate change types. It's like, this is something that bothers me about it technically. It's like, well, climate is about everything. So, okay. But your models aren't based on everything. Your models are based on a set number of variables.
Yeah.
So that means you've reduced the variables, which are everything, to that set. Well,
again, the variables being everything. I don't think so. I don't think it matters whether, I or any other person is, thinking about, sex or food. Like, I don't think that's going to have a significant, like one person is thinking one or the other or whatever, or something else entirely. Don't think that's going to have, any impact on the climate particularly. So, I mean, it might have a small impact. I guess it depends, how much sex you have or how much food you have. How much methane you produce as you fart because you had too many beans, whatever. It might have some kind of impact, but a negligible one. I don't think that's really important. So in that in that sense, everything, no. But everything that would have any kind of significant impact. And it's anytime humans try to do anything sufficiently complex, they almost always get something wrong. And even when you layer in multiple people helping you out, not everybody is going to, there's going to be something that slips through the cracks. Nobody caught the mistake. That just happens. It's just the nature of things.
Did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation if it's about everything? And that's not just a criticism. That's like, if it's about everything, your models aren't right. Because your models do not and cannot model everything.
And that's true simply in, like I said, with regard to the sun, it's like we don't know. As far as I know, we're not able to accurately predict when the sun will enter a period of low activity. Like we have our observations of it, for going back 100 years or however long we have them for, and we have some idea of what to expect, but we don't know for sure. We haven't been observing long enough to know for sure. Just again, with the very idea of climate change, it's like the climate's always been changing. We know from the fossil record that there's been, periods of it being immensely colder and immensely warmer than it is now. And yes, there are some cycles that seem to repeat, but again, you don't fucking know. You can't know for sure everything that's going to happen, or when it's going to happen, or how bad it's going to be one way or the other. So he definitely does have a point there about them not being able to model everything accurately. They can't guarantee that. And if these climate scientists are the ones who've been telling us every 10 years that we only have 10 years to change things or to turn things around or we're all dead, and none of that has happened, no matter how many times they've said it up till now, there's been several decades now they've been trying to pull this shit, well, they don't know what they're talking about, and their models don't work. They're not accurate. That's an obvious, reality. And I believe that the thumbnail I threw together for this has a chunk on it, and he's not even in this clip. I decided to be classy about it and use him instead because because it's Peterson. If you know anything about his book, I did briefly toy with the idea of looking for a picture of Anna, maybe in a bikini or something, and having a lobster image that I could maneuver so that it looked like it was pinching her nipple or something. But like I said, I decided to be classy, so it's just an angry chunk yogurt.
Okay, so what? What did that even mean?
Yeah, even Rogan didn't really seem super on board with that.
I mean, I hope he's not. Clearly, he's.
Again, like I said, kind of interesting, isn't it? That so often Peterson actually does say complete bafflegarble nonsense. It doesn't mean anything, and yet he definitely had a point. Like I said, maybe just by accident he had a point, but he had a point here, and they're pretending. Or they're really too dumb to get what he was saying. It's always possible. I kind of suspect they're just pretending, though. They're pretending that they don't understand what he was saying, even though it was pretty straightforward. Anyway.
It's easy to influence, as we've seen in this weird shift toward just complete denialism when it comes to science related to COVID.
And of course, again, I can't talk about that on this platform, but I think any of you who have any or even slightly independent-minded or whatever, and have done your own research into the science, I think you'll know that the leftists have a rather bizarre relationship with science. They continually treat it as though it's like a fucking religion or something. It cannot be questioned, and it's like, actually it can, and that's the entire goddamn point of science, is to question things, try to figure out how they work, and not just proceed, because on blind faith that, oh, some person in authority said that this is how it is, so we just believe them. And it's also not done by consensus. Again, Chunk Yogurt loves that. He loves to talk about how 99% of all the scientists in the world agree on X, no matter what X is. And he's almost certainly never right when he says that. It's always bullshit. And it's certainly not, 99% of all scientists agree what's going to happen with climate change or anything else. And, but, and furthermore, didn't somebody say something to Einstein one time about there being a number of people who had, they voted or whatever and decided that, they didn't think that he was right, and he said he made some kind of comment about how, why were they, why did they have a fucking committee to decide this? It's like, it only takes one of them to prove me wrong. Because that's how science works. It's like you only need one person to prove something, and there you go. Like, you don't need everybody to agree, because science is not fucking democratic. It's not voting on reality. It's observing reality and deciding, yep, that's real. But again, like I said, the leftists, stupid. We all know that at this point.
Okay, so all the guys who are very defensive and literally spend their full day on Twitter defending Jordan Peterson, their argument is, well, why didn't you let the video keep playing, huh? You took him out of context, huh?
No, you didn't take him out of context. That was plenty of context. It was very clear what the fuck he was talking about, or at least, what anybody else would have been talking about in that instance. I mean, again, I'm willing to admit that maybe he just, by accident, had a good point. But it doesn't change the fact that he had a good point there.
Well, okay.
It was like a minute-long video,
yeah.
okay?
Rogan asked him to clarify after that, and here's what he said. This is his statement verbatim. Well, that's what people who talk about the climate apocalypse claim in some sense. We have to...
Climate apocalypse. Maybe it was him that I was thinking of. I hadn't heard that term before, climate apocalypse. Although that's certainly how some of them fucking act.
Change everything. The same with the word environment. That word means so much that it actually doesn't mean anything. Like, when you say everything, like, in a sense, that's meaningless. What's the difference between the environment and everything? There's no difference. What's the difference between climate and everything? Well, there's no difference.
Okay, now I will give you that clarification, that does sound more like his standard bafflegarble crap. So maybe it was by mistake that he had a point. But I still maintain that he did raise a good point, whether he really meant to or not. And although there is still a point to this, sort of. I mean, again, environment doesn't mean everything. Climate doesn't mean everything, although they do, more things than probably most people who are trying to study anything environmental or climate related. Their models, whatever models they're building, will likely miss a lot of shit, because they're just not going to think of everything that's going to have a significant impact, because it's just the nature of things. And as far as say everything in a sense that's meaningless, that's sort of true. I actually knew a girl in school who said something that at the time I felt was kind of profound, and I don't know, maybe it still is. Maybe it still seems that way in a way. What did she say? How did she phrase it? I'm trying to think. She said, I can't remember the order, but it was something like, it was something along the lines of something, anything, and everything is nothing. And it's like, yeah, to a certain extent that does mean something. It means be specific when you're talking about things, because you're too general on things, and you're not really saying much. Of course, that again, that's part of what Peterson does, quite frankly, is, he tries not to really talk about much, but anyway, and yet sound like he's being profound.
Oh, okay. Then in that case, I'm going to go ahead and refuse to believe the vast majority of climate scientists.
And there we go with the bullshit that TYT is so famous for with regards to that. Oh, science is done by consensus, y'all. Except it's not, Anna. You could literally have 99.9999% of all scientists or whatever agree on something, and if they're wrong, then they're fucking wrong. And the one guy who said otherwise, if he's right, he's right. That's how that fucking works. It's not, you don't get to vote. It's not up for debate. It's there is an objective reality. And yeah, most of the time, probably most people, unless they're influenced by money, and we all know that happens, they're probably going to agree that what really is real. But not necessarily. You threaten people's livelihoods, you threaten their funding or whatever, and you can get a lot of scientists to agree to say that something that's complete bullshit is indeed reality. There's been an awful lot of that over the last century or so, and it's killed a lot of people.
99% of them who
99% of them. And that's not true. I think Hard Bastard went into that at some point. I don't remember where he what he was reading or whatever about that, but it's definitively not 99% that agree on the climate bullshit or practically anything else. It's just a bullshit statement that TYT is really famous for saying. They always default to saying 99% of scientists agree on this. 99% of doctors agree on that. It's utter horseshit.
Disagree with whatever climate denialism he's trying to push on Joe Rogan's podcast.
And I went over my personal feelings on the whole climate change thing and why I basically decided that it doesn't fucking matter. It's not denialism. I'm not denying that the climate is changing, but I am agreeing with Peterson whether he really knew what he was talking about or not. I know what I'm talking about. I know goddamn well they don't know what's going to happen. I know that because they keep saying what's going to happen, and then you wait and see whether it happens, and it doesn't. They were lying or they were mistaken. Either way, there's no point in believing these fuckers.
And I'm going to go ahead and believe the guy who's wearing a bow tie and a tuxedo to Joe Rogan's podcast.
Anna, what in the name of fuck does the man's style of dress have to do with anything? You're criticizing that because that's what he's wearing. If the man had shown up in fucking pajamas, you'd be criticizing him for wearing pajamas. It doesn't matter what he wore. You'd criticize it no matter what because you're just a shallow bitch.
And also the guy who used to endorse eating an all red meat diet.
There's actually nothing wrong with eating an all red meat diet, as far as I'm aware. There's a lot of false information floating out there. One of the things that I've had people tell me in real life, no less, is that you have X amount of pounds of undigested red meat in your colon or something. Like that. That's an urban legend, but it's something that a lot of people believe because they heard it someplace. It's bullshit. As a matter of fact, I believe what I have read about how meat is digested, most of it is gotten rid of in the small intestine, so it doesn't even make it to the colon. So no, you do not have a bunch of festering, undigested meat in your bowels. If you did, you'd die, because that wouldn't be healthy to have a bunch of crap rotting down there like that. That's not how that works. But no, there's nothing wrong with eating an all meat diet, an all red meat diet. It doesn't, obviously how healthy that is will depend on the quality of the meat You know, if you're eating beef that was grass-fed only, then probably you're doing pretty good on that kind of a diet. Now, Peterson had some kind of weird story about what happened to him on that diet, or some bullshit, or about apple cider, or some it's it's horseshit. It's just insane. I think he claimed to have been awake for 23 days straight or some shit, and it's like, I'm pretty sure that most people don't even manage that when they're taking speed, and they certainly don't, wouldn't do it just because, they had some apple cider or whatever the fuck it was that he said. It's just, he said some crazy fucking shit. And I guess now is as good a time as any to mention, or possibly mention again, seems like I've said this before, but anyway, why I don't trust the man, why I didn't need Vox Day to tell me that he was untrustworthy. I didn't need to read Vox Day's book, although I did read part of it, but I didn't need to read it in order to know that Peterson was untrustworthy, because I happened, back when he was still rising in popularity several years ago or whenever, I ran across a video clip of him participating in a debate. It was him and somebody else versus William Lane Craig and somebody else. If you don't know, William Lane Craig is a Christian apologist. Anyway, it was just a clip from the debate, so I don't know for certain what the entire debate was about. I guess it was the probability of the existence of God, or whatever, something like that. And William Lane Craig raised the point, and it is inarguable. It is a, it's not something that you can, it's not an argument that you can actually defeat, because it's true. It simply is true. There's no way around that. But it's super easy to sidestep. The argument that William Lane Craig laid out was, if God doesn't exist, then ultimately there is no, there's no point to anything. Like that, nothing has any purpose. And that's true. Like, ultimately, there is no purpose to anything. No purpose to life, no purpose to the existence of our species. Eventually, everything will end, everything will be forgotten, and there was no point to any of it, unless God's real. Now, there's no way, like I said, to argue against that point. Like, not directly. But it's super easy to sidestep it by simply saying that, well, you don't need there to be an ultimate point to anything. You find, value enough in, and then insert whatever the fuck it is that you're interested in. That's the easy way to get around that. Like I said, you can't confront it directly, but it's super easy to go around it. But instead of doing that, as any logical person would have done, Peterson, in his response, pulled from nowhere, from his ass, a hypothetical suffering female child, and said that telling her that her suffering had no point, no purpose, would be the devil's own work, or something to that effect. And I immediately recognized that as an appeal to emotion. As someone who was fairly freshly red-pilled at that point, I recognized that as a solid, no way around it. That was a fucking leftist tactic to try to get you to not think, to try to get you to only feel. Use your emotion, not your reason. That's how the left works. And I knew in that moment, long before I heard Vox Day talk about how untrustworthy Peterson was, how insane he was, I knew this man is not to be trusted. And I stopped watching any of the videos that YouTube kept on trying to get me to watch of the man. Anyway. So yeah, don't trust Jordan Peterson. That is my advice to everyone. But, just like Joe Rogan, who I also don't like and don't trust, he occasionally, both of them occasionally get things right. And it's great when they do. It really sucks every time that they mislead people, but every time that they accidentally lead people in the direction of the truth, that's good.
Well, but doesn't...
No, but he's the
Joe
expert.
Rogan do
You
that
guys,
too?
he's the expert. Don't you know? He's so smart. He's so smart. We just don't get it because
Well, as crazy as the man is, he's definitely smarter than you, Anna.
we're dumb.
Yeah.
And even though he's not a climate expert or a climate scientist, has no expertise in this area whatsoever,
Again, appeal to authority.
He's just better than all of us and knows better than all of us. And since he
Well, better than the Young Turks, yes.
uses that ridiculous word salad that you all heard, he knows
Only the second part of it, I think, was true word salad. The first part actually made sense.
what he's talking about. We can rest easy. No climate change. Okay.
He didn't say that there wasn't climate change. He said that you couldn't accurately predict what was going to happen. And that would appear to be true. Certainly all the predictions to date have not panned out.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
You guys are real smart.
Kudos to him for not, like, at least learning a little bit about climate science. So there'd be a little bit of ambiguity because he's got a PhD in, I don't know, something. So maybe he's learned about it. No, clearly he hasn't. So I appreciate him not doing the bare minimum there. Nothing that.
I don't remember what the title of the video was, but long ago, and I don't really care for Sargon either, but long ago I did watch a video from Sargon of Akkad, and I liked the way that he referred to Buddy here. The Buddy is what HB refers to him as, but Sargon in that video said something about this guy's name is John Idarola or something like that. And Sargon said something about, it's like, showed a clip of him and then paused it and said, "You're gay, John." And, then just a little bit later said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not gay, you're just a faggot." I like that, but anyway.
The fundamental frustrating thing about that is the horrible combination of relatively.
And David McDowell, I think he still has a YouTube channel. I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't been taken down for, for being too funny or something. But I believe he's got, the little fake commercials that he makes for HB streams, and one of them that plays often features John Idarola here, and it's what is it? Buddy's Nutty Buddies, testicle ice cream with pubic sprinkles. David McDowell's stuff is filthy, but it is hilarious.
Dumb, dense person armed with rhetorical questions. That should not be rhetorical. All of those questions, he has contacts. Ask a climate scientist about all of those things, about how they make their models, how they choose which variables to focus on, how they rule out other variables. And you might learn a little bit about the process that can narrow it in from your false assumption that the environment and the climate is about everything and everything needs to be looked at.
Well, it's not about like everything, but it is about, almost guaranteed, it's about more than what their models actually include as variables. And again, so far they don't seem to have a very good track record of being able to tell us what's going to happen. Because they keep saying, we're doomed in 10 years, and then 10 years later, we're doomed in 10 years, and then 10 years later, we're doomed in 10 years. I think it's a fairly safe conclusion that we are not doomed. Not in 10 years, probably not in 100 years, probably not, in the foreseeable future, I mean, if we are doomed, it'll be because Biden, starts nuking Russia or something. It's not going to be because, there's too many cow farts. Because again, it's like they said the cow farts are way the fuck more destructive, to the climate than all of our fossil fuel power plants and all of our cars burning fossil fuels and all that shit. All of that combined is not as bad as us eating meat, even though that's clearly bullshit because it's farming that's not natural. It's natural for humans to be hunter-gatherers and to eat mostly meat. A few little vegetables and fruits or whatever, yeah, but mostly we go out, we make a kill, and we eat, and we eat the organ meats primarily. It's like you ever see a a predator, lion or whatever going after a carcass, what do they go for first? The liver, because that's where all the nutrients are. If you can, a lot of people can't stand the taste, but I'm telling you, if you can stand the taste of liver, you should eat liver. You should eat liver a lot more often. It's good for you. Anyway, but it's like all of the farmland in the Great Plains. How long did it take? There was when we started farming in earnest there, at the beginning of the 20th century or whatever. there was like 17 feet of topsoil, and in just a few short decades, we depleted it. And we're actually using fossil fuels to produce fertilizer to allow us to continue farming that land. Whereas if we were ranching it with bison or cattle, we wouldn't be depleting the soil. We'd be enriching it and getting to have lots of steak and liver and other things. And it's, I'm sorry, but, the left wants you to be vegan, except that's more destructive to the environment and the climate. I mean, how many vegans have you seen that stick to only things that they can grow locally? They never do that. The fuckers are always like, I'm going to eat 1,000 bananas a week or some shit. And it's like, where do those come from? Not America. They're flown in from down south. It's like, flown in, shipped in, whatever. Burn a ton of fossil fuels getting it here. You're not helping the fucking environment, you chicken shits. No. Staying where you are, raising cattle, and eating those cattle, that would be the sustainable, worthwhile way to go. But no, you want us to get rid of all the cows because they're farting too much. And that's destroying... Fuck you. The leftist arguments on all of this climate horse shit is completely nonsensical. Completely.
That's not how it works, literally at all. Do you understand the greenhouse
You don't understand a goddamn thing, you fucking waste of air.
effect? Do you understand what excess carbon does when it accumulates in the atmosphere? Do you understand how we get an excess of carbon in the atmosphere?
And I believe Styx Hexenhammer has, for quite some time, suggested that he believes there is some kind of feedback mechanism that basically, takes care of the problem. And if there isn't, then it's probably too late anyway, and we're all fucked. So, but like I said, since they keep saying we're all fucked, in 10 years, and then 10 years rolls by and we're not, and then they just repeat the same thing. They just keep extending the deadline further and further and further and further because it keeps on not happening. I think that's a clear indication that probably we're okay, at least for now, and possibly forever. And again, this idea that there's nothing you can do, like I said, grow crops and then seal them up in airtight containers. You've captured the carbon. If you don't let it back out in the environment, then it's captured. There are ways. There are things that can be done if it really is too hot. You can put up satellites to reflect light. You block even just a tiny percentage of the sunlight we're getting, and it will cool the fucking planet off real goddamn quick. It's not impossible. It's not as though even if things do get really bad that there aren't things that we can do later on if we need to. It's just, like I said, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They want... ultimately what it boils down to is that the leftists just want to control us. They just want to control everybody. They want to say how we live our lives. They're sure that they're smarter than we are, that they are better people than we are, more moral, etc. And they want to control us. Fortunately, they're not going to get their way.
Atmosphere. Do you have an alternative explanation as to how that could happen other than human activity? Provide anything. He didn't really provide anything there. And the biggest issue was he is denying climate change there without ever saying that the climate isn't changing. He's just saying, I have issues based on my ignorance in the fundamentals of climate science.
I think he's, part of the point there was that the so-called climate scientists are also ignorant. They're not willing to admit it, but they are.
He doesn't say, I've done independent research and there isn't more carbon in the atmosphere, no ppms that we got to worry about, and the Earth actually isn't heating up. I've done my own. He hasn't done it.
It's only anecdotal, but as has been pointed out by some people, anecdotal evidence is still evidence. It does, as near as I can tell, appear that things are getting warmer. At least locally, they seem to be. I mean, last year was really goddamn cold, and part of the time, at least this year, has been real fucking cold. But generally, over the course of my life, it does seem to me as though the winters have, I mean, occasionally you have a severe winter, but in general, they seem to be trending warmer. Again, just an anecdote, but one of the last years that my grandmother was not with us, because she was with us for quite a while afterwards, but one of the last years that she was still up and about and possessed of all her faculties, she made dressing for Thanksgiving like she always had done in the past, and I assisted her with making it that year, and she mixed up everything, including the turkey broth, in a very large container that was too big to fit in the refrigerator. This had never been a problem for her in the past because she simply set it out on the enclosed back porch of her house and put cloth or whatever over it to keep any bugs or whatever from getting to it. And in previous years or decades, it had always been cold enough at that time of year, right around, right before Thanksgiving, that it wouldn't spoil, or anything by being overnight. Well, it had a really nasty sour taste to it. I think it kind of went bad because it was not anywhere near refrigerated temperatures outside. I mean, again, just an anecdote, but an indication that for a long time something had, there'd been a certain level of coolness at that time of the year, and then there wasn't anymore. So, are things generally trending warmer? Yeah. Can I guarantee that that's because of human activity? No. But, human activity probably has some impact. But again, just because things are changing doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to be a disaster. It's it's not as though it's impossible for us to adapt. I mean, the human species, for instance, lived through, I don't even know how many ice ages. The last ice age was like 10,000 years ago, so we definitely lived through that one. I don't remember precisely how often they happened, so there probably were some others as well. And it's also worth considering that historically, at least insofar as we, as far back as we have sufficient evidence or whatever, it does appear that the warmer periods that the planet experiences are when civilizations tend to experience their height. Like when Rome was at the peak of its power, I believe that the planet was much warmer at that point than it had been for quite a while, and that and warmer than it was afterwards. So warm periods seem to coincide with impressive achievements of the human race. And obviously that's not about, oh, well, that's just because we were making it warmer. The fucking Romans were not producing a shit ton of carbon. It's like, that's not why. So anyway, so let's just enjoy the warmth while we can, huh? Because there's no guarantee that even in our lifetimes that we're not going to have things turn pretty fucking cold. Like I said, sun goes into a period of sufficiently low activity, and it could be real goddamn cold real fast. So, let's not look a gift global warming horse, whatever, in the mouth.
Any of that stuff.
None of it, no.
He's just saying it's
too bad it's a brazen bull instead of a brazen horse, because then that would, then that would work.
It's big. It's like having an issue with Neil deGrasse Tyson and being like, well, physics is the study of everything.
There are a lot of reasons to have issues with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's a piece of shit.
How can you map the motion of heavenly bodies? There's too many variables. If it's everything, it's nothing.
Are there really too many variables for that? I don't think there's as many, That's a funny thing. I don't remember who said that. I remember somebody talking about that at one point decades ago. I remember hearing somebody talk about how, this is kind of this embarrassing thing where often it seemed that even though, what was it? I can't remember exactly how it was phrased. Something along the lines of, physics often wound up seeming simpler than people kind of thought that it should, and chemistry seemed more complex than people thought that it should. Something like that. I can't remember. I don't know. It was a long, long time ago. But anyway, I think, probably the motion of heavenly bodies or whatever. It's like that's fairly easy to predict. Like, it's a lot easier probably to predict most. I mean, not like all of them, but the major ones at least. It's a lot easier to predict their motions because they're pretty fucking steady. Whereas the climate, it does change, and it always has, according to the fossil record. So you don't know what it's gonna fucking do, man.
Yes, in some sense, they've figured out how to do it, and you can talk to the man and learn a little bit. He actually wrote a book simplifying it for regular people. It's just the whole thing is very frustrating. Joe Rogan is not an expert on this. And honestly, I don't even know where he stands on climate. For all I know, he accepts climate change. I don't know.
That is true. Joe Rogan's not an expert. But again, you don't necessarily have to be an expert to understand something. The leftists always appeal to the experts, unless the experts are saying something that they don't want to believe, in which case, fuck the experts.
Look, I obviously do not listen to his podcast regularly anymore, but from the time where I did,
I never did.
He was good on climate science. In fact, he had a
Will he be after?
He was good, meaning that he agreed with whatever dogma she bought into.
A couple more talks
I don't
with Jordan
know.
Peterson?
That's what I'm worried about because he's so impressionable. That's like the thing that.
And here, Anna does actually have a point. As near as I can tell, and one reason why I don't trust Joe Rogan on anything is because he does strike me as the kind of person who, if he encounters convincing rhetoric from someone about something, then he'll believe that person. Maybe he'll only believe the first person that got to him with convincing rhetoric. But, he doesn't strike me as somebody who is steadfastly trying to determine what is true. He's not an actual truth seeker. Just, anybody, whether they're telling the truth or whether they're lying, if they have good rhetoric, they can probably convince him of something. And then once he's convinced, he'll be on their side and he'll help to propagate their viewpoint. And sometimes that'll be the truth, and sometimes it'll be a lie. So, I don't like that. I don't like people that have such a large reach as he does, and who can easily lead people, can just as easily, perhaps more easily, since there's more people telling lies than there are people telling truth, it seems. He can just as easily or more easily lead people astray as he can lead them in the correct direction. So I don't like that. I don't think that somebody like him should be listened to. But unfortunately, a lot of people do. All the normies, I guess, listen to him.
Terrifies me. I'm like, just stop talking. That interview, by the way, with Jordan Peterson went 4.5 hours long.
That is why they talk so long.
Terrifying, considering how impressionable he is.
Yeah.
So I don't.
She's terrified by people having conversations.
I don't know. We'll see what happens.
That's more than enough time to sweat through a tuxedo.
My God,
I hope they had a break, mop up a little bit.
Oh yeah, you're just dismissing him because he's wearing a tuxedo. No, I'm dismissing him because he's.
Well, as I said earlier, she would dismiss him no matter what he was wearing. She would criticize him for whatever he was wearing.
Stupid, especially on this issue. Sorry, and all the people who think he's like this insanely enlightened guy. Everything boils down to clean your room,
Yeah,
right?
Well, there's actually a close tie to the Patriot Front story we're going to be talking about. There's this need for a basic level of discipline and organization of their life that they feel that they didn't get, and many, by the way, haven't gotten. And he is a very inroads to it. He is the Da Vinci Code of self-help, written to the lowest common denominator. Maybe intriguing on its surface, but you shouldn't believe everything that you read in it.
Right.
The weird thing about Peterson's book is that the text and the titles of the chapters or whatever don't seem to actually go together.
Right. And then while on one hand, he wants you to take personal responsibility and clean your room, I will leave you with this one last quote from the Joe Rogan interview that he did recently. So this is a crisis of everything? It's like, no, it's not. Or if it really is, then we're done because we can't fix everything.
He's getting paid. I don't have any proof. I don't have any evidence.
I think that sums up everything the Young Turks do, basically. They don't have any proof. They don't have any evidence. But they're sure that one of their political enemies is paying, somebody to say something. I don't imagine that he's being paid. I mean, he could be. I'm certain that he's not above being paid by whoever. But on this particular topic, probably not.
He's shilling for the oil industry. That's what he's doing there. And it ain't to sell more of his books. Does he even talk about climate or oil or anything like that in there? Check the numbers. Check his investments. I don't know.
He's not a climate expert.
Neither are you, bitch. None of you are. None of the people on the Young Turks are experts on a goddamn thing. They're all a bunch of fucking morons.
I choose to believe the actual scientist, not the guy who's trying to tell us.
You choose to believe the, no doubt, government-funded scientists who are saying exactly what they're paid to say. See, they talk about somebody being paid to say something, and they fail to recognize that this is part of the left's problem. They treat, and to a certain extent other people, not necessarily on the left, perhaps in the center, and maybe a few on the right, although I think the right's gotten fairly healthily skeptical about such things. But anyway, they treat scientists these days as though they're the new priest class. They're the people in society that they trust beyond what they should. They act like, oh, these people are their motivations are so pure and they wouldn't ever do anything wrong. They wouldn't ever lie to us. And it's like, of course they would. They're people. They're human just like everybody else. Of course they're going to fucking lie to you, especially if they're paid to. I mean, some people can't be bought, but those people are very few and very far between. I like to think that I'm one of those people. Maybe I'm not, but I keep thinking, would I sacrifice the life of even one of my stray cats out in the yard that I don't really even get to pet? Would I put one of them down if somebody agreed to pay me $1 million? And I keep on thinking the answer is no, I don't think I would. Because it's just not who I am. But anyway, like I said, some people can't be bought, but most people can. And it's amazing how many people will sell their soul, essentially, for almost nothing. They'll sell it for a little bit of money, a little bit of fame, a little bit of power. Practically fucking nothing. It's amazing. Ugh. But yeah, a lot of scientists can be bought, and some of them sell themselves very willingly, and others are kind of, coerced into it, like they didn't really want to lie, but they gotta eat. Their kids gotta eat.
That climate is everything, and if it's everything, then how do we know climate change?
How do you clean your room when clean could be anything? Can I clean up decay, cosmic? psychological trauma that manifests in an area. If it's everything, then can we ever fix it?
Thanks for watching.
There's nothing quite like seeing someone as dumb as Buddy there pretend to himself that he's smart. What a piece of shit. Anyway, well, Chunk's here at the end at least. To shill, advertise, whatever the fuck. Anyway, so, oh, wow. Only an hour and 10 minutes. I'm amazed. I'm gonna... Now I need to remind myself what JDA said when he decided that he was going to go from 5-minute videos to 10-minute videos. He's got to talk slower. It's like, I'm going to have to talk slower again, I guess. All right. Well, anyway, there's that. I don't trust Jordan Peterson, but in this case, he had a point. Like, he actually had a point. Again, might have been by accident that he had that point, but he had that point. Anyway. All right. Until the next one.
What about you guys? We ain't found shit.